Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Behind Enemy Nines. I can't say the name, but Kevin on Night, my guy here from Falconholics, is in the house. I'm going to be going over on his side here, but he's been kind enough to come over here on our end, over here on the Hawks Nest, as he covers the Falcons over there on YouTube and a variety of different places. Kevin, it's great to have you in the house. How are you feeling right now, my man?
Well, I think I can speak for all Falcons fans when I can say that we're not feeling too great. Over here, I live in New York actually, so we've been buried under almost a foot of snow this week.
Oof.
So we got the full winter experience down in Atlanta. It seems like it's still lovely, so they haven't had to deal with that, thankfully. But the team, unfortunately, is what's making everyone upset, not the winter blues. So yeah, Falcons 4-8. It's been a brutal season in a year that was kind of touted as like a okay, time to start winning sort of thing. And yeah, it's all gone off the rails. And at this point, we're sort of wondering how long until firings start happening. So it's not gone super well, Brandon, at this point.
When you look at why it's not gone well, and I have some opinions I'd like to bounce off you with this from an outsider's perspective, but what is your perspective on, where this thing should have taken left at Albuquerque kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of factors, but to me, watching the games and really breaking it down every week, we have seen this Falcons team go out and beat good opponents. I mean, they took down the Bills convincingly. They took the Patriots to the wire. Should have won that game. Took the Colts to overtime. Should have won that game. This team is capable of playing at that level and playing with the 8 and 9 win teams. But every single week, there's just this array of mistakes that is their undoing each and every week. There's sloppy play. There's pre-snap penalties. There's just egregious game management issues, and just this overall sort of sense of malaise over the whole team. And whenever it's the whole team kind of underperforming, and or you have the sloppy issues, the mistakes, to me it always comes back to who's leading the ship, how is this being managed and run, because I don't think the players all forgot how to play all of a sudden. I don't think that the stars that we're used to seeing all of a sudden just can't hack it, all of them. And the Falcons have had some things go their way this year, particularly defensively. I think the talent level on this team is a lot higher than it has been in years past. They've started to get development and all these things, but when they get to the actual games, Brandon, they just can't seem to win. And to me, I think it starts at the top with the head coach and the way this thing has been run. And it seems like there's sort of a lack of accountability from top to bottom here, and I think that's their biggest issue.
That's interesting. And so, are you in favor at this point, as things fit to form, that this team needs to go in a different direction with the coach? I did feel a little bit like the last time you guys kind of looked at Bill Belichick for 5 minutes and then you just kind of pivoted to the next coach. It didn't feel like necessarily an exhaustive process that brought you around to this. Again, I might be speaking out of school on this one, but that's at least how it seemed on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think that the Falcons were very close to going with Bill Belichick. I think that Arthur Blank, the owner, was talked out of it, thankfully. Seeing what's happened with Bill Belichick, that would have obviously been a different flavor of disaster in Atlanta. But the Raheem Morris hire was unexpected from like a just sort of neutral perspective view, because you know they've already had him in the building. They had him as an interim head coach. They decided not to really seriously pursue him after that. Um, and Morris, I think, is his positive traits are that he does have a ton of experience and a ton of connections, and he was just at the head of an elite defense in Los Angeles. So I think the Falcons love to get a culture builder at the top, a guy that they think is going to bring in and produce a winning positive culture, and that culture and harmony is really important to Arthur Blank. And you can tell from the guys that he's brought in, starting with Mike Smith way back when, after the grievous error of hiring Bobby Petrino, and that only lasted about half a season, to Mike Smith, who was a big culture guy. Dan Quinn, obviously famous for his culture and the brotherhood and all that, and that's continued over to Washington. Arthur Smith, maybe a little bit to a lesser extent, but then Raheem was right back to the culture guy. And I think the Falcons passed up some coaches that maybe had more sort of coaching pedigree in terms of what do you bring to the staff, and do you have a scheme that you're going to pull in here? And I think that was not really why he was being brought in. I think Raheem was flexible and willing to kind of run whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that it was not exhaustive. I think they interviewed a lot of guys that ended up going on and having success elsewhere. Mike McDonald being an excellent example of that. Mike Vrabel, another excellent example. I think Vrabel was the one that they probably had the chance to hire that they didn't. I think that was the mistake. They did hire they interviewed Harbaugh, but I don't think Harbaugh was interested really. I think he was pretty clearly wanting to go to Los Angeles. And Belichick, I think Arthur Blank wanted, but I think he was talked out of it, thankfully. So yeah, I think that, it's not necessarily that they didn't do enough searching. It's that the conclusion was wrong. And that's kind of been the case for them. Each of the last, 2 times now that they've hired a coach just hasn't ended up being the right guy from the list of candidates they've brought in.
Is there a guy right now that you have your eyes targeted on as a potential replacement then to bring him in, or just we've got to just get to it's not the right guy, we got to get to the right guy?
I think at this point, obviously firing a coach midseason, it's not going to produce any positive long-term results. This isn't, Jeff Ulbrich would be the interim head coach, I believe, in Atlanta, who unfortunately for him had to be the interim head coach last year with New York. And so he's obviously experienced with it. He could handle it. You wouldn't be firing Raheem Morris hoping to get a spark at this point. You're 4-8.
So no. I mean, off season.
Yeah.
Off-season.
Oh yeah. Off-season wise, Seahawks fans won't like the answer. I'm all about Clint Kubiak. I'm a big proponent of hire the young offensive mind a year early, because if you wait, Kubiak, and Kubiak continues to have this success that he's had in Seattle. Next year, he's going to be the top guy, or close to it if he continues this run of success. And I'm not sure the Falcons are really competing for that type of candidate as they're currently constructed. But if you give an opportunity to someone like a Kubiak a year earlier than the rest of the NFL is ready to do that, you kind of get them at a discount, quote unquote, or maybe you can convince them to take a maybe less than ideal situation. Obviously, the Falcons don't have a first round pick, so that's a big deal. Their cap situation has been kind of much maligned, but they can clear a lot of space by just moving on from Kirk Cousins. So that side of the coin isn't that bad, but obviously the lack of a first round pick is not really helping your case at all here. And the fact that your quarterback is probably going to be missing the start of the season, recovering from an ACL tear, which would be his third ACL tear now. So that's obviously not going to help, but this team is in need, I think, of a good offensive mind. I think they've always needed that. And Arthur Blank has been really against it. Really, the first time he hired an offensive coach was Arthur Smith. And I thought that was good process. You look at Arthur Smith's resume prior to that, great in the red zone, great on third down, basically showed you everything you wanted to see from a statistical game planning perspective. Came to Atlanta, just kind of stagnated, didn't continue to iterate on that offense. And we've seen his offenses in Pittsburgh have also kind of gotten stuck in the mud. He just kind of seems that he's not willing to iterate, and that was his issue. But hard to figure that out, when you're interviewing someone after a couple of seasons. But I think the right idea would be to continue swinging until you find one, because as we've seen, if you don't have your offensive play caller as your head coach and you find a good one, he's just going to leave sooner or later. And the Falcons, had Kyle Shanahan in their building, and obviously he leaves, goes to the 49ers, has a lot of success. So I do like Clint Kubiak. I think obviously Kevin Stefanski, if the Browns make the mistake of moving on from him, would be a great candidate. But to me, it's all offense with this team. And that's kind of where my mind is usually at. Is no disrespect to these defensive coaches. A lot of them are excellent. Mike McDonald, good example of that. Mike Vrabel, another one. But I'm all about, we got a young offense in here, and this team has always kind of needed the offense to be the engine of the team. And that's the direction I'm looking at this point.
I think it makes a lot of sense, quite frankly, and a little inspired, especially with the offensive personnel you have. And, Kubiak's can be a little bit more of the balance run heavy, which I think on the surface with Penix, you'd be like, oh, we want to go pass happy with this guy and high volume with this guy. But I think because of the injury history alone, As you go into the future, he's probably better suited to be in an offense that's going to maybe more minimize down the volume of his passes, but allow him then some, scripted stuff. He can hit all the throws in the book. So maybe a nice little fit there as a possibility. And I do think that Kubiak is going to get some run here. Some of this is on if we're going to get some of the retread coaches like a Tomlin, LaFleur, get out onto the open market. That's going to drive some of this. But I like where your head's at with it. I could definitely see it be one where the connection makes a lot of sense for what you have there personnel-wise. And I think it'd be a good hire for you guys if you did. I think Kubiak's on his way. It's only a matter of time, it looks like to me on, he's had 3 really good stops. He gets instantaneous results. He's done that with both the Saints and the Seahawks now. He had the injuries last year at the Saints halfway in the year, and that's why it didn't sustain, but very, very impressive. You mentioned Penix, and of course, we've got a couple of controversial decisions by your Falcons in recent years that have not just lit the Atlanta fan base on fire at times, but have lit the NFL world on. Funny enough, one of my highest reviewed videos is my reaction. You guys throwing that first round pick last year and during the draft and clipping it. And is like, Ram fans were just so happy on that one. But let's go first with the Penix thing. You signed Kirk Cousins. You then draft Michael Penix. I didn't beat you guys up as much as others did for this. I actually kind of understood a little bit. I was more out on the Cousins aspect of it because it's like that money could have been better spent in other places. Where were you at it in the time, and where are you at with it right now?
Yeah, I think at the time I tried to take a step back. Obviously in the moment I thought it was pretty dumb, and I think that's kind of borne out. But I'm very much in the same mind as you, where I think the mistake was signing Cousins, not drafting Penix. I think this team, and it's continued to be the case, they consistently think of themselves as further along than they are. They've been doing this for years. They kind of refuse to ever admit they're rebuilding, even when it's obvious they are. And I think this whole Cousins Penix dalliance that they did was also a refusal to just like, maybe we should just have a mediocre season. Maybe we should have a growing season with Penix this year. Let him get his reps. He's already an older quarterback. I mean, he's not Brandon Weeden or anything. I mean, or Tyler Shuck, like this is, a 24-year-old quarterback, but I think Penix was ready to play as a rookie. Like it probably would have looked a lot like this year, up and down, but we saw some good things from Penix. And I think he's a guy that just needs to really get on the same page with his receivers, get the game reps and start playing. And I think the Falcons would have been much better off this season with a year of Penix, out there. And the financials of the Kirk contract were devastating for this team, to where if Kirk isn't playing like a top 10 quarterback, now you're owing multiple years of guaranteed money, and he's coming off an Achilles. Like this is all like, that is where I think the mistake was made, that you can't just like, how much better would the Falcons have been off to go get Justin Fields on a 1-year deal as the bridge guy if they're not confident and waiting to make sure they get Michael Penix or whatever they said about like, oh, well, we couldn't just wait for the draft. We had to get somebody. Okay. Can you get Justin Fields for whatever this, like just beat the Steelers offer, which was not very good. Have him as your bridge guy. We know he loves Atlanta. And I'm sure he would have entertained coming here. And then eventually go to Penix, because Justin Fields always seems to burn out eventually every season. As much as I love him, we know he's more of a bridge guy at this point. Pay him, $5 to $10 million, and then move on to Michael Penix whenever Penix is ready, as opposed to $100 million guaranteed to Kirk Cousins, which, they compounded that by really being sticklers about trading him. I think they could have traded Cousins to the Vikings. I think they could have made this work if they were willing to take on the money to get some kind of pick, or willing to lower the pick compensation to some minimum amount just to save the money, or like, and I think they thought they had a more valuable asset this whole time and basically stuck to their guns, didn't get a trade done. So I'm sort of with you. I think the decision to draft Penix was totally fine. The decision to sign Kirk Cousins was the problem, and doing them both together is just really like, there's a reason teams don't do this. Like this is crazy, and it's going to cause problems. And lo and behold, there's problems. There's problems in Atlanta.
You always got to be careful when you're doing things that no one else is doing. When you got 31 other NFL teams that aren't doing this thing, you go, well, we're trendsetters. Maybe, or maybe there's a really good reason why no one's gone down that direction of things. And you talk about the misidentification of teams. I have a pet theory on this. Let's see if you feel like it adds up. But I think that teams, this is my working theory through the years, find themselves in 4 different states. You're either rebuilding, you're ascending, you're in purgatory, or you're elite. And you don't go from ascending to purgatory to elite. You go from ascending to elite. You get stuck in purgatory for the exact reasons you talked about because of the misidentification by teams on a yearly basis, especially in the off seasons, to think they're this or think they're that when they're actually this. And then that ends up leading to problems. And I call it, of course, purgatory, because like purgatory and that you're stuck there, you can't get yourself out once you get yourself into that column. Do you buy that theory? Do you feel like that theory kind of applies a little bit for your Falcons?
Oh yeah, I mean, Arthur Smith. We remember fondly 7-10 and the 8th overall pick 3 seasons in a row. It's the first time that's ever happened in NFL history. And the Falcons have not made the playoffs since 2017. So that's 8 seasons now this year when they're inevitably eliminated probably this week from the playoff hunt. And yeah, I mean, even through the Arthur Smith era, even after they chased Matt Ryan out of town because of their pursuit of Deshaun Watson, which only the Browns could save Atlanta from themselves in that regard. So thank you, Cleveland, so much for falling on that sword.
Were you guys just not willing to guarantee the whole deal? Is that what it was?
That was the sticking point. So, and like at least they have some standards. I mean, they were considering trading for Deshaun Watson. So that's bad enough, but at least somebody was like, we can't guarantee this contract. Like somebody somewhere was like, no. I don't know who it was. It wasn't Arthur Blank. I can tell you that. Somebody got in Arthur Blank's face and said,
he got leverage somehow. Deshaun did, which he shouldn't have had no leverage, but somehow came out of that with leverage. It was kind of wild to watch.
Yeah. But again, this team, that's just another example. Like they would have made that trade. They would have acquired Deshaun Watson, and maybe he fares better in Atlanta. It's a better situation, but I think we all know Deshaun's mind is not in the game, and that's why he hasn't had success. It's never been about his talent. It's been about everything else going on with Deshaun Watson. So, this team, I think is they kind of thought they could just flip a switch and go from Matt Ryan to another quarterback. And they hired probably the worst coach to do that in Arthur Smith, who seemed to not really prioritize quarterback, which is a wild thing to say for an offensive coach. His decisions at quarterback were to pass on quarterback in 2021 when you had a top 5 pick and the capability to do it. Now, the quarterbacks that they would have gotten there maybe would not have worked out, but the decision to pass on one is pretty staggering. Then in 2022, it's Marcus Mariota. And then in 2023, it's Desmond Ridder. So, there was not really any effort put into the quarterback position. And that set them back. Obviously, they didn't even really take a swing on anyone. And then when Raheem Morris gets here, it's the opposite approach, which is we're going to invest too much in the quarterback position. We're going to get 2 starters. We're going to do a top 10 pick and a $100 million contract. And again, I think why can't you just be normal? Can you not spend any money or resources on quarterback, but maybe also not get 2 starting quarterbacks when you just need one? These, like you said, this team has this desire to be trendsetters that isn't earned. And to me, it's like you haven't even sniffed the playoffs since 2017. So maybe you should try paying attention to what everyone else is doing for a change. Maybe try to copy some of these successful teams as opposed to thinking you can just innovate your way when you haven't really earned the right to think that you're an innovator at this point. It kind of seems a little arrogant to me. So
yeah, there's definitely smartness in zigging when everyone's zagging, but there's also a don't just zag for the sake of zagging. Actually have something tangible, intelligently wise as to why you're doing it. And this seems more to me a little bit of everybody's doing this. Let's try this thing. It's more like let's try this thing. And to that point, as the other item that's on the docket with this one being this last draft and the decision to help out the Rams team in my division, which they did not need this help. You did not need to give them a slip and slide to their next franchise quarterback, Kevin. I don't understand why your Falcons team had to do that and hurt us this badly, but they have. And I hated it at the time because of I just thought your Falcons haven't shown enough here to make this number one. I don't like making that trade anyway, future first round pick, because how many times in recent years have we seen it blown up for those teams that have made that move? And it's like, oh man, we're regretting that one. Shouldn't have done that. As well as, like you said, you guys hadn't been out having the playoff success. If I'm a team that's trading my future first round pick to get another first round pick in this draft, it's because I'm coming off a playoff season. I'm coming off some success. And at best, you'd been kind of slightly below middle of the road in recent years. What was the organization thinking from a confidence standpoint? I know that they thought they were better than they were, but it's so, to me, then you get the edge rushers, and oftentimes edge rushers not in the first year popping great like they will into year 2 and 3 and 4. And so it's like, well, it's an instantaneous move, but you don't get that. I've really struggled to understand this one. Maybe you're a little bit warmer on it, but walk me through it if you can.
Yeah, the trade itself was interesting because they actually ended up acquiring a day 2 pick that they didn't have as a part of the trade up, which they really needed it. They were really short on picks. And so they actually ended up like acquiring an extra pick in the trade up, but that was why the compensation was so high, to giving up a future first just to move up, a handful of spots. So um that aspect I liked. The players the Falcons got look great. Xavier Watts, one of the best rookie safeties in the NFL. He's been fantastic. James Pierce might be the best rookie pass rusher in the NFL. Sacks in 4 straight games now. He's been coming on. He's been playing great. The other rusher they got looks good. They didn't have to trade for Jalen Walker, but he also has been playing very well of late. So the players they got look good. So that angle to me is good. But you touched on, again, what the issue with this team is, that they view themselves differently than they are. And I think there's somewhat of a disconnect here, and that I think Terry Fontenot, the general manager, sees this roster and is like, this roster is good enough to compete. We can make this move now. And I feel confident we're going to be picking, in the late teens into the 20s. And I think Terry Fontenot was correct in that assessment, that this roster is good enough to compete. I think this roster this year is better than the roster's been at any point prior to this season since maybe maybe 2017. The defense was playing quite well to start the season. I think everything's kind of fallen apart. I think the heart of this team is kind of dead at this point, and that's starting to contribute to some of these games. But what Terry Fontenot didn't realize is that the coaching is so bad on the offensive side in particular, and from the head coach, I believe, as well, that it kind of doesn't matter that the roster is good. If you can't win, it doesn't matter how many players you put out there, how many moves you make. And Fontenot is, I think, someone that has a checkered history as the Falcons GM. I think he's made some good moves and some bad ones. And, I think this was his best offseason, but the team isn't where they thought it was. And once again, this team is far worse than expected. So I think the GM made the move with the idea that these guys are going to take care of business. Now, the players that I've collected over the past 2 years, which are all coming up as big thumbs up. I mean, the players that didn't play last year under Jimmy Lake, who was the defensive coordinator last year, who got fired because of how bad that defense was after just a season. Those players that Jimmy Lake wouldn't put on the field are all playing major roles and looking good. Ruka Rororo has a significant role. Brandon Dorlus is maybe their best interior player. He's been a very effective pass rusher. They've managed to kind of get the players now on defense, and we've seen like elite games from this defense. Like what they did to the Bills hasn't been done to Josh Allen since his rookie season. So they've got a defensive coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich that I think has the goods, and they've got the talent there. Unfortunately, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, is in way over his head, and Raheem Morris isn't really capable of helping him because he doesn't have the experience. The Falcons have no experienced offensive play callers on their staff. Like Zach Robinson was a first-time play caller, and they brought in no other help. The quarterback's coach is a first-time quarterback's coach. They did have a veteran offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford, who I think is very good, but he's not someone that's going to be able to help call plays for you. And the only other major veteran coach they had was Ike Hilliard, the receivers coach, who's coached a number of Hall of Fame receivers with the Steelers forever. He was fired after week 3, which was a very strange maneuver for a team which at the time, had just lost 30-0 to the Panthers, but kind of hard to pin that on the receivers coach. And that, I think that firing was kind of the canary in the coal mine that this team is not healthy. And the staff as a whole is having major issues. And just this week, questions have continued to come up. about that firing and the timing of it. And this week it was revealed, after initially claiming that it was a performance-based firing, which I don't know how you can fire a receivers coach for performance 3 games into the season. It's now been called a communication issue. And I don't like the sound of that. So I think there's just major issues going on in this coaching staff, in this building, and sort of the core of the team is sick. And I don't really know what to do about that other than that you got to clear it out and start over.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and strange to hear Raheem went for untested. What you're saying on that, with the connections he had throughout the league, and being a guy that you had plenty of, I'm sure, names on the Rolodex you could have brought up for offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, and all of that. So strange on his part, paying the price there a little bit. The guy you drafted in top 5 a couple years ago, Kyle Pitts, has been a guy you guys have been kind of waiting to pop. Came in as a very young player, still a very young player, 25 years old. He's been reasonably productive every year, but of course you guys were looking at him to be the freak show next great tight end iteration. Is this a kid that's still right on the edge of realizing it, or is what he is? And I ask this for my fantasy team.
I still believe in Kyle Pitts. This year he's had some issues with drops. When Penix was playing, there were some games where that connection looked really good, and I think to Pitts's credit, he really has worked hard on becoming a competent blocker. I mean, he's not a plus there, but he's not getting blown off the ball like he was early in his career. You can use him play side. But don't expect blocking tight end from that. But he can get in the way, and he can do what he needs to do. He's better than a receiver, but he's not as good as a blocking tight end. But that's fine when he is. I believe Kyle Pitts, even statistically, he's basically been a fringe top 10 receiving tight end, and probably should be a top 10 receiving tight end. That's not what you were hoping for with that type of investment. You're thinking Kelsey level play. That hasn't panned out. I still think that's within the realm of possibility for him, because I think he got drafted into a situation in Atlanta where, again, there was no quarterback. The one time he had a quarterback, in Matt Ryan, 1,000 yards. So after that, Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, that's not going to work. Arthur Smith also seemed to lose favor with the head coach who drafted him in the top 5. That's odd. Last year, it seemed like Kirk Cousins wasn't really interested in throwing his way. But when Penix has been here, Penix seems much more interested. And this year, Kirk has been much more willing to throw to him as well. So I think Pitts has the upside still. He's the same age as Penix. I think he's 24 going on 25. So, I mean, the whole career is still in front of him. And my fear, of course, is that he's going to just go to a team that's actually competently run. Everyone's talking about the Chiefs, and that just makes too much sense with Kelsey probably retiring. And he's going to have an outstanding career, because the issues with the Falcons offense really aren't personnel. I mean, the receiving core is not good enough this year. We know that, but it's coaching. I mean, the scheme has a lot of problems. They telegraph their plays, and they don't use play action. I mean, they're one of the lowest play action usage teams in the NFL, which again is crazy when you're talking about a guy in Zach Robinson who learned under Sean McVay, should have had the blueprint for what to do, and really hasn't, other than last year using exclusively 11 personnel, hasn't really made this offense look anything like Los Angeles. There's been a lot of pistol. There's been very little play action. They kind of refuse to line up under center, and they've had excuse after excuse for why that is. Last year, it was Kirk's not healthy enough to play under center, which I'm not even sure was true, but whatever. And then it was, it's because Penix is more comfortable under center or in the pistol. Okay, sure, but maybe you should have taught him how to play under center this offseason. And then it was, now we're seeing under center. It's because Penix wasn't comfortable. Now Kirk is healthy enough, we can put him in it. So I think there's the problems with the offense have a lot to do with how it's constructed and coached, and their third down play calling is the worst you will see in the NFL. You'll get a healthy taste of it this week, I'm sure. And it's just sad, because again, I think the pieces were here. They have what they need, I think, to be successful. They obviously have arguably the best running back in the NFL in Bijan Robinson, who last week had one of his best performances. They still lose to the New York Jets. Despite that, we're just running out of reasonable explanations for what this could be. If it's because I really don't think the players are the ones coming up with the problems here.
Oh, yeah, that's odd to hear an offensive structure because on top of it this year, I'm sure you're well aware, we've had such a heavy transition to 12 and 13 personnel with the Rams right now. He's sitting in 11 personnel a lot, still too much like it's not where the game's going in general terms across the board. We've embraced that. Many teams across the board have embraced this to attack the cover two shell defense, which has proliferated the game. So on top of that, again, going to you have the two running backs you do in the ground game that would work so well off the play action under center, in addition to making the running game a little more lethal with it too. So it's very counterintuitive as a setup. And with Michael, you had a year to get the footwork from under center, man. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear
that
pistol
hard.
in year two.
It's not like he's never played it. I mean, they didn't use it at Washington, but it shouldn't be that complicated. I mean,
I don't think so either. I never liked that. Like the footwork should you got a year to learn the footwork. You know what I mean? You figure it out and take all off season. Come on, get it done.
Go rent a beach house with your center and go get it figured out. You know,
just drop after drop, just rep it out. It eventually becomes second nature when you do. That's the only way to do it. I think some of these guys just don't work on it. I guess that's my inference on this, is that they want to throw and do all their little throws and do all their work on their arm stuff, but lift the weights. Maybe do speed drills, but you don't want to sit there and do the drop back like a dancer, redoing the steps every time. Nobody likes doing that, but it's the footwork that makes that stuff go. And you got to master it. If you're in this day and age, especially, you can't live in shotgun 24/7 anymore. It's not, maybe 10 years from now, the game cylindrically goes back to that place.
Yeah, we're back to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It does the circle thing, times a flat circle. We always get back around and it always ends up spinning. The defense has got some interesting parts and is exciting. It looked like, as I go and kind of check out where the depth chart's at, though, there is a lot of IRs there. Is that affected the defensive performance and being a little bit more dominant? Because Raheem, defensive minded coach, he wants to probably lead a little bit with the defense. Defense is going to be dominant. We'll shut teams down. But you seem like you've had a couple of injuries here and there that have kind of it's still a good defense, a lot of talent, but that maybe have lowered it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, has been the attrition. And I think they're sort of keystone piece has been Divine Diablo, who came over from the Raiders. He's been their sort of jack of all trades middle linebacker that they just didn't really have. They do have Caden Ellis, who is, I think, a really good attacking linebacker who's like kind of a hybrid edge player almost. And he's been phenomenal as a run defender and as a blitzer, but you don't really want him dropping. You want him moving forward all the time if possible. So getting Divine Diablo in here, he was outstanding to start the season, ends up breaking his forearm, misses, most of the middle chunk of the season with that. And they go to JD Bertrand, who is their third linebacker, and it was a disaster. They stuck with him way too long. It was ugly. Kyle Shanahan made a point of ruining that man's life. Like, I mean, it was play after play, just going at JD Bertrand. And that's one of the biggest beefs I've had with Ulbrich, is their insistence on playing Bertrand when he clearly was not ready for this role. But now that Divine Diablo is back, it's stabilized quite a bit. Now the injuries have come in the secondary. They've got multiple guys on IR there. They've been rotating tons of corners at this point. They had, Mike Hughes, their cornerback 2, was out for a while. He's finally back. AJ Terrell missed some games. He's been back and played well. They lost their slot corner for the season, Billy Bowman, who was a rookie that was playing well. They do have D. Alford, who's kind of been like their top reserve corner, and he's played well, but now they're basically down to just him. Like, there's nobody else there. He has to play the slot, and if he goes down, there's really nobody else left in the secondary. So, it's just been kind of an attrition thing over the season. And when, I think this defense is certainly good enough. Like in years past, especially last year under Jimmy Lake, this defense was atrocious. Couldn't stop anyone. One of the least aggressive, most dink and dunk, defenses, just tons of separation allowed, lots of soft coverage, not aggressive, some of the lowest sacks we've ever seen. This year is the complete opposite. The Falcons are one of the most aggressive blitzing teams. They've really gotten it kind of crazy with it at times, rushing Josh Allen on over 50% of his dropbacks and stuff like that. And their pass rush has exploded. I mean, they're one of the best sack teams in the NFL. They're in the running for setting a Falcons franchise record at this point, a year after being the NFL's worst pass rush. So that's paid dividends. That side of the ball has gotten better. But unfortunately, it's coincided with the offense like falling to pieces. And the special teams is also the worst in the NFL at this point. So they just can't overcome it. And it sucks. It feels like the monkey paw curled. We were like, well, can we get 50 sacks? And it was like, sure. But now your quarterback's going to tear his ACL again, and like the offense is going to fall to pieces. So,
what did it cost? Everything.
Yeah, everything apparently to finally get a pass. That's what it takes to break the pass rush curse in Atlanta, apparently. But, as bad as they've been, like some weeks, like, I mean, they gave up 500 yards to the Colts, still almost won that game somehow. With Jonathan Taylor having like a game of the century situation, the rest of the team can't get it together. And I think after so many games of this happening, where you see the defense at the end of games, it doesn't seem like they believe anymore. And it's just inevitable when you're 4-8, you've been let down over and over again, like against the Jets. The Falcons got the ball back on offense twice in the final 2 minutes and couldn't get a first down. They punted it back to the Jets twice with the game tied with 2 minutes to go. And the Jets on the second try were like, all right, well, thank you. Now we're just going to kick our own field goal and win. So I think at this point it's attrition and just mental attrition too. Like how much longer can you keep playing hard when you just keep getting stabbed in the back by the other two phases of your team?
It's kind of the way it goes defensively a little bit. You see it on team just by a game basis. You see it on the game like about midway through the third quarter is usually where, just in general terms, the spirit breaks if things are going well for a defense. Like today, our offense is just doing nothing. You multiple games over on that. It's human nature. You can say be a professional, but it's just human nature in the way that this goes. You mentioned the pressure. According to NFL stats, you guys are creating the quickest pressure in the NFL. But then I'm also noticing that you're blitzing, to your point, at the second highest rate in the NFL. Is there a price to doing business on this one where my Seahawks are going to be able to find some big plays? Because I look at that on the surface and go, ooh, there may be some big plays down the field there because you're going to leave one-on-ones on the edge. Or have you guys been able to work around that and mitigate the big plays with that high blitz rate?
For the most part, they've done a good job of mitigating it because when their corners have been healthy, you trust AJ Terrell one-on-one against pretty much anybody. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be the toughest test yet. No question there. Mike Hughes has been solid as a corner too. Last week was his worst game of the year. He gives up the deep touchdown when he trips, unfortunately, and the safeties. It didn't seem like the Falcons really respected Tyrod Taylor in that game. And the safeties get nowhere near enough depth and let the go route go right past him into the end zone. Mike Hughes ends up tripping on his way into the end zone when it looked like he honestly had a shot at picking that off. The ball was way underthrown. And there's nobody home, so deep pass given up. But they typically play good coverage on the back end. They have two safeties they love, obviously, with Jesse Bates is one of them, and Xavier Watts is the other. I think Watts leads all rookie safeties in picks. He's got 3 already. It's very dangerous to test the safeties, and they like their cover options. Where they've mostly gotten eaten up is on quarterbacks escaping the pocket. Tyrod Taylor did it to him over and over and over again because the Falcons do blitz aggressively, but it's a lot of young players. They don't really keep their rush discipline. They tend to overshoot their gaps. They tend to try to play games with their stunts, and they don't cover everything up. So there's almost always an escape route for these quarterbacks that are willing to run. And Tyrod Taylor got him over and over and over again on that, just getting out of position. So if the Falcons can't finish the rush, he's got a wide open lane to run for a first down. Did it I think the Jets converted 4 third downs on one drive. And I think 2 or 3 of them were him just scrambling or getting away from the blitz. So I think earlier in the season, they were pretty dependent on blitzing to create pressure. That's gotten better to where they've been getting more pressure with 4 lately. But I think it really depends on the opponent and the situation. And, I think against the Saints, they were very successful getting pressure with 4, but they also had a 2-score lead. So, in that situation, may not need to blitz as much, but otherwise they do need to blitz, and they're usually pretty good about doing it at the right times. But there certainly are opportunities for teams to take advantage of that aggressiveness. And, there are definitely plays to be made there if the offense can outfox the defense.
I think too, I like I know the kid's on IR now with Billy Bowman, but long-term, a Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts safety secondary room, it's going to be pretty cheap for a couple of years there. That wouldn't be surprised if the next couple of years beyond the season, those guys get you like combined 10 interceptions a year from the two of them. Bowman's got the size issues because he's a little bit lazy, and that's why part right he's on the IR, but he's playmaker back there, was at Oklahoma. And, I know Jesse Bates is still good for you, but wouldn't be surprising to me if you guys transition that way this offseason and went with those two to bring down the cost a little bit. And probably because you like Billy so much, right? Or am I seeing that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, they were having Billy Bowman play the slot for them. So I don't know if they long term, we'll see, because if they clean house, who knows what's going to happen. I don't. Billy Bowman obviously is even more experienced at safety, so you could see them just go to Watts and Bowman on the back end if they want to get a little cheaper there. If they actually do the rebuild that they probably desperately need to start next year. But I could also see them keeping Bowman in the slot and just, seeing what happens with Bates next year, seeing if they, let him play out the next season, see if they want to do an extension or want to just kind of cut bait to save money, or maybe they even consider trading Bates to more of a contender, get something back for him. But I think the future is bright there. I think corner 2 next to Terrell. Mike Hughes, I think is serviceable there. They're only paying him $6 million a year, so he's a pretty big bargain for a good corner 2. But I think you need to upgrade that sooner or later, and eventually start preparing somebody to be your future CB1. And corner, probably they can't afford to do it next year, unfortunately, because they don't have a first round pick. But going forward, that will be a spot that they'll continue to add to. And I think the secondary as a whole, future's bright there. Just have to figure out how they want to attack it going forward.
Yeah, there's some good talent. And guys like Braylon Trice can come back around the injury front and find some health. You got some rotation there at the edge. So I think there's a lot of hope. Just to stay on this defense a little bit longer, when I looked at them, it does look like you guys right now are having the third highest rate with offenses attacking you inside in the run game in the NFL. And when I look at, of course, the personnel with you guys, you're not rocking really a big 330-pound one tech out there. It's a little bit of a lighter line by the way of the weights of how you set this up. I'm sure light and fast is what Raheem would probably tell me. But is this a place where there's some susceptibility, vulnerability to the Seahawks being able to get downhill, A and B gap type runs, hammer that stuff with that? And am I seeing that correctly? My outlook of that on the surface of it?
Yeah, I think so. It's been something I've been calling for. Even in this offseason, I was like, when are we getting the nose tackle in here? Because we're going to play Divine Diablo, who's, a 230-pound middle linebacker. Caden Ellis is obviously huge. He's in the 240s. But if you're not going to get a one tech, like a real one tech in here, you're going to be vulnerable when teams decide they're going to double team you and just run right up the middle. And that's played out over and over again. The Falcons keep rotating who they have, trying to find a solution there. It's not really one. It's not really a good option there. They just are kind of vulnerable in that area, and they seem okay with it. And when the rest of the defense, like the pass defense was, the number one pass defense for the first 8 or so games of the season, they were okay giving up, some rushing yardage, and that wasn't a big deal. But now with things, the attrition kind of hitting, and of course the offense not doing their part, that is certainly a spot that you can attack. And the Colts made mincemeat of that defensive line in the run game.
That's Taylor, man. Taylor since Wisconsin's just been a destroyer of worlds on inside runs. He is just, that was the worst kind of matchup for you guys to face up with that kind of ball carrier in that way. We don't have exactly that kind of inside hammer like that to operate off of. A couple donations here. Phoebe Moore Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, I ask every Falcons fan, was it Kyle or Dan Quinn's fault that Super Bowl collapse?
Yes.
How about is it Brady kicked ass?
Well, that is also true. Everything is true. I think both are at fault, but Kyle Shanahan, to me, like, obviously he just needed to just run it out and kick the field goal. We know that, but Kyle Shanahan was doing what he did all year, which was he's going to go for the jugular every time he can. And I've rewatched, the sack that took them out of field goal range about 100 times. And it's a missed block by the running back in pass pro. And what you can see is that the receiver is wide open, running to the end zone. And if Matt Ryan has half second to hit him, that play call looks like a genius. The Falcons are celebrating, whatever. It doesn't happen. The running back blows the block and Matt Ryan sacked. They're out of field goal range and the rest is history. So, I don't necessarily get super angry at Shanahan because that's just what he does. That was how he played it all year. He wasn't going to change it in the biggest moment. And I think it would be weird to expect him to, even though that is probably his biggest fault, is that he doesn't know when to quit sometimes and when to just take the play. But I'm not really super angry at him. I think a lot of people have said it's Dan Quinn's fault for not overriding him. But again, it's not something they did at all during the season. So not unrealistic to expect that. But
Yeah.
just an unfortunate and frankly absurd series of events that happened in that game. We all know the Edelman catch, that one of the most impossible catches you'll ever see. It really does feel like the Falcons were divine intervention in that game, and I'm not really sure what else they could have done. Obviously defense, they could get a stop, but Tom Brady was just on fire at that point, and I'm not sure any defense is stopping him in that situation. So maybe if the Falcons get the ball first in overtime, they probably win that game. And unfortunately, this was back when the overtime rules were quite dumb, and just we just hand it to whoever gets the ball most of the time. But it is what it is. I'm not too mad at Kyle. I mean, if he did something unusual there that was not his modus operandi, then I would be a lot more upset. But it's like, you live by the sword, die by the sword, and unfortunately in that case, they died. The worst case scenario happened. So hopefully he lived and learned from that. Falcons unfortunately didn't seem to learn any good lessons from that whole situation. But
well, part of me bringing it up is a lot of Niner fans wonder, based off of that Super Bowl, to some of the experiences that they've had in the playoffs with Kyle, if when he gets right up to near the finish line, if somebody doesn't maybe lose their water. And it doesn't sound like you feel that that's the case, but that's a little bit of a wonderment out there from some fans, including Niner fans, around like, whoa, he can get us all the way there, but there's something gets tight hand, gets a little shaky, play call uncertain, and that he's got that inherently in him. I don't buy into it necessarily, but it's an interesting concept because it's happened a couple times, and it's maybe.
I mean, you could certainly be mentally scarred from that happening to you, the way it did in Atlanta. So, I mean, it wouldn't shock me. So,
well, then it makes you all the much more tighter when you face that situation again and then again, and you fail at that one, then you fail again. Now it starts to become a thing, right? It's like in your head, it's like it's not, no, I'm fine. I'm a good play caller. I don't have this. Yes, you do. It's like the devil on your shoulder almost a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Roger Morales, a Rams fan in the chat. See, they love this. And thank you for the $10 donation, Roger. He says, "What's up, Brandon and Kevin? Just came on to say what's up and thank you for the Falcons for that next year's first round pick." Yeah.
Yes. You're welcome, buddy. At this point, I don't care. I hope they lose out because we need that top of the second round pick desperately.
No, Kevin.
They're not going to lose out. They do play the Saints again.
No.
Yeah, they do play the Saints again, so there's no way they're going to lose again. I mean, this team's not going to get probably within the top 5 picks, I wouldn't think.
Kevin, if you give them a top 5 pick, I will have internal hatred for your Falcon team.
Yeah.
You guys are already on my crap list. It's going down.
Then you should be praying for the Seahawks to deliver the killing blow to Raheem Morris this weekend, because I don't think this team is the situation. The vibes continue to deteriorate, as the kids say, in Atlanta. And if they don't move off of Raheem soon, I have no idea how low or how explosive this is going to get. It's getting hairier every single week in that press conference room. So the best case scenario for you is probably to have this change happen soon. And hopefully the Falcons get those couple of, moving on from the coach bounce.
You always get the win. Yeah. The next week's always a win. They always come out hey, man, whoever's watching us now, I might get cut if I don't step up here a little bit. Coach is getting fired. I better start towing the line there. So, that would be good to see. But I think you guys are still going to end up giving him probably
a top 10
near top. Yeah, it's top 10 minimum, and you might be flirting with that top 5. And the only other thing I'm at least happy with is we don't have that generational quarterback. You imagine if like an Arch was really great and then coming out and the Rams could package those 2 first round picks to go get, and then Stafford to Manning, just like a seamless transition. Like, oh man, they've been a problem for us. So it's like, please no. But don't do that anymore. No more trades with the Rams, okay? No more of that stuff.
It's not up to me.
I know. Well, tell people
it would be very different. Yeah.
Were you angry at the deal when it first happened? Or you're like, well, I can kind of see it.
No, I mean, they duped me into thinking this team would be competitive too. So I love James Pierce. He was one of my guys. And getting the 3rd round pick as a part of the trade, which they then spent on another one of my guys, and Xavier Watts, I was like happy with that, because, I naively thought maybe this team would break their playoff drought. And if you give away a late first round pick for a late first round pick, doesn't seem so bad. But unfortunately, the real world has arrived, and the Falcons are still a bad football team. So, in hindsight, not looking as good, but at least at least for the Falcons, the players they got do look good. So you're happy about that.
I think they'll both be good players too for the future. I love Watts, and same thing with Pierce. At very least, he's going to give you a dynamic pass rusher for the next few years, minimum, bare minimum. Feed Me, thank you for the $2 donation. Says some rare Kevin Stefanski love. Deshaun coming back? I think that they're. I don't think they're doing a lot with Deshaun.
So we can't rule it out. But no, please no. That would be the worst.
I do like it. If they let Stefanski go, though, I wouldn't mind you guys jumping on. I think that's a guy that's been, you always have a hard time when you don't give the guy a quarterback. Yeah, Baker had a great year. Then after Baker, you've had nothing coming through there. And that's an offensive-minded coach. So it's hard to execute your offense if you, general manager, don't give me a quarterback that can allow me to execute my offense.
Yeah. I would love Stefanski. I think he would be a big slam dunk hire in Atlanta. And I think the Falcons should just be like, do whatever you want at quarterback. Kevin, we don't have a first, so obviously they'll sort of have to see what they got in Penix for a year. Hopefully he could be healthy for most of the season. But if that goes south, I think, they're probably looking at another quarterback in 2027. So could be a good situation for Stefanski to get his guy in a year if he's patient.
Looks like the quarterback class might be a little better in 27 than it is for 26 too. So, and you get Schwartz on the DC side of it too with Stefanski. So it's a combo deal, and Schwartz is a hell of a defensive coordinator. So not too bad to go or too shabby to go there. But thank you, Feed Me. Let's give a little shout out, if we can, my man, to the sponsor of this show, which is going to be Sleeper. If I get my thing here right. You're still here, by the way, so you can still comment on my picks and bash me for some of these selections here. But Sleeper is the #1 sports app running in the game today. Yeah, there's a lot of options, but this one is the best one because it's got more picks, more options, nice deals, promos. They're always running. And right now, when you use my code NEST, you can get matched up to 100% of your first deposit, up to $100. So use my code NEST, and they will match you up to $100 first deposit. So that's $100 from me to you. And they also have a freebie $20, no deposit needed. Just create an entry. They'll put $20 into your account for creating a login. So $120 from me to you through the Sleeper app. And you show some love to the channel at the very same time. How about that? Terms and conditions do apply. Please see their site for details. You can see my picks here on the other side. Kevin, do you like Bijan Robinson at over 66.5 yards over in this one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they're probably going to continue to run the ball as much as they can, although this staff does always make me nervous about these props because like there should be no question that Bijan's going to get more than 66.5 rushing yards. But there's always a question with this staff. Like sometimes Tyler Algier, and I like Tyler Algier, no offense to the man whatsoever, but sometimes it's like a Tyler Algier game, and sometimes the Falcons just get annihilated and then they just stop running the football. But 66.5 seems like that should work, right? I mean, all reasonable thinking is, considered.
He ran for like $120 against us last year, I want to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, he had some success. I've got Walker going over 16.5 yards as well, with some of the vulnerabilities in this Falcons, defense as far as the rushing attack goes. And then I went with a couple Ram picks, Kyren Williams over 66.5 yards against Arizona, and anytime touchdown for Kyren, as well as I think that they're going to get back to running the ball after forgetting about it last week was LA. But those are the picks. You can utilize those today. I got a 7.21, but I got a 50% boost on these picks as well. So $5 bet brings me into like $50 on a return. Not too bad, not too shabby, but please do utilize Sleeper today. Again, terms and conditions do apply. And in the state of Washington, there are some limitations, but it is opening up in the state of Washington, and you can use it in a casino if you want to try to pop on in there on that as well. All right, let's turn over the offense here real quick on this side. I know I've kept you for a little bit of time. Looking at you guys offensively wise, a little extreme on the rushing attack. So we've got you at 74% of your runs are going to the outside. Only 23% are going to the inside. I believe that's leading the league by a country mile, Kevin. Okay. Looks a little predictable there on the thing. And I know that, look, Bijan and does. Yeah, I know. And I can see why the coaching staff's kind of breaking you a little bit on this one, where it's like, really, guys? Really? 74%, huh? You don't think that maybe there's some tendencies there? You want to throw a little tendency breaker in there, maybe?
Well, they don't use play action, so that's not an option.
Oh, well, there's that on top.
Yeah, it's wild to me. Bijan is a very effective inside runner. Tyler Algier is too. I mean, Tyler Algier, you could argue, is maybe more suited to a one cut and go sort of gap scheme. And I think the Falcons actually have the personnel to run a little of both. I think they could. But I think Zach Robinson is just completely obsessed with the outside zone to just the detriment of the offense. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because we've seen the Rams embrace, being much more diverse up front. They've incorporated a lot more duo and some gap scheme elements to that rushing attack. Basically, the NFL has left this like outside zone sort of obsession behind. Not the Falcons are the only team still doing it, and it's obviously Bijan can make it work because he's Bijan, but it's just you'll see teams when they see a carry, they just sort of sit on the outside zone, and you'll just everybody crashes. It's just you can tell teams are just really prepared. They're not really thinking much at all when the Falcons are operating their offense. It's part of the reason they struggle so much. Is that they're just not really setting anyone up for success, and I think part of that is that the run game is incredibly predictable, and they're not really catching anyone off guard with with the inside running or even attempting, the man gap concepts. They're just very rare to see in this offense.
You got to do it too because of the alignments, the defensive lines now, where they've gone to that hybridic thing where it's sort of part 3-4, part 4-3. So it's 4-3 with the defensive tackles and their alignment. And then you go 3-4 sometimes with the stand-up guys as a wide 9. So you have all this natural gap there for those A and B gap runs, those inside runs, whereas it's also kind of defeat a little bit of the outside because you've widened out your defensive line to sort of take away a little bit of set the hard edges and whatnot with that. So it's, again, kind of you're going a different direction from where the NFL is kind of going right now, stylistically speaking, when it comes to that. That's why Sean made the transition as he has. And he's got the big beef 1,000 pounds up front that they invested in a couple of years ago in free agency just to make sure that they could get those runs going and rolling. And so it's kind of strange you guys are just so hyper fixated. How has been Kirk Cousins this year now back off the bench, replacing in Michael Penix? Last year it did look like, man, the mobility was cut down heavily. We hear about that Achilles thing, and it's just like you walking with a boot on your foot, even after you've had it recovered and all that. It's just, it can be a long-term kind of thing. Is he bounced back? Has he looked at his best with you guys that you've seen him there? Where's he at?
Yeah. I mean, like last year when the Falcons were on their sort of 6-3 start, I thought Cousins looked pretty competent. He obviously set like his passing yardage record. He broke the Falcons passing yardage record against the Bucs, threw for 500 yards, was efficient. And, I think a lot of the issues, again, were with the sort of construction of the offense, and we understand more of that now, but he is limited athletically. He kind of always has been. Last year it was worse. I think this year he's healthier. But when he was filling in for Penix in like coming into the game late, he was awful. And then in the one game against the Dolphins that he started, he was awful. And everyone was like, oh, well, he's just cooked. But since he's been named the starter after Penix's like season-ending injury, he's played a lot better. I thought last week was one of his best games. He was really let down by the construction of the offense and by the receivers. On one of those drives where the Falcons had the ball with an opportunity to kick a field goal to win it under 2 minutes, he hits Darnell Mooney, who's supposed to be the wide receiver 2, right in the hands, drop. That would have been like a 15, 20-yard gain. Then on the next play goes to David Sills, who's been pretty reliable as his like one of Cousins' guys. Not an overly dynamic guy, but sure pair of hands. Not today. Past the 50, just hits him right in the hands and he drops it, and they punt the ball away. So I thought Cousins certainly navigated it as well as he could. He's still vulnerable to just like not seeing the pressure at all and just taking a sack without kind of even registering it. But otherwise, I mean, I think Cousins is playing Cousins football, and he's mostly just kind of hamstrung by the situation, which is not good. So the Falcons pass protection is fine for the most part. They struggle to pick up blitzes. So that's always going to be a challenge with Cousins at the helm, trying to get away from that. But he's been pretty solid. So I think Cousins has helped himself, obviously, since kind of getting the starting job the last 2 games, because his relief work was ugly stuff. So thankfully it's not that bad, because I was worried this was just going to be a total disaster with Cousins if he had to play.
Yeah, well, he's still capable, and you got to bring it to him. I like us, but we've had issues a little bit with more of the mobile quarterbacks get the pressure, mobile quarterback gets away from the pressure, and then they can extend the play and cause us problems. Maybe not as much of an issue this where with Kirk. You mentioned Bijan Robinson for Hawk fans that aren't as aware of this, because I think some of it, you mentioned utilization is a big part of this with the balancing of Algiers and some of the weird games you have where Algiers will get more carries for some weird reason. I think that he is right now, and this is a year by year thing. Last year, Saquon would have been the best running back. I think this year, obviously, Taylor is, but I think this year's Bijan's the second best running back in the sport. Am I, you got that calibrated in the same fashion?
Yeah, yeah, and I think Bijan really does have that. I mean, he just matched one of LT's stats, Danny Tomlinson, and I think that is his comp. I think he has the potential to be that special receiver as well as a runner, and I think he just needs to get out of this terrible offense to be really unlocked. And I think he'd be right there with Taylor this year if this offense wasn't a disaster. But Taylor is obviously incredible as well. So not to take anything away from him, but I think Bijan has more of the receiving potential that Taylor. That's really the one thing with Taylor. Taylor's a fine receiver. Don't get me wrong, but not necessarily creating separation with his routes the way that we've seen Bijan do this year. So I thought that would have been a really fun offensive player of the year battle between him and Taylor. But, after starting off on a historic pace, this offense has, basically become so predictable that Bijan can't really even continue to carry it or continue to match those statistics. Teams are kind of selling out to stop what he does best. And Falcons offense kind of out of answers about what to do. Can't really string together drives. So it's hard to run the football at the level you want to when you can't really keep drives going. So I think Bijan should be the centerpiece of this offense next year, especially if Penix is going to miss time. And if you have a good defense, why not try to build sort of a ball control style in the interim? But Algiers is another good running back as well. I mean, if it wasn't for Bijan, I think he's had 1,000-yard season under his belt. I think he's a very capable starting running back, but just with Bijan, it's hard to take Bijan off the field. So,
is there a possibility with the loss of the first round pick in this next year's draft, and with the fact that you are approaching a decision on Bijan, whether or not to give him a contract in this day and age? I know he's got 2 years left on the rookie deal, but we know after 3 years, these guys can negotiate. Back in my mind, there's a little bit of, well, you could potentially recoup a first round pick, potentially by throwing Bijan in what's going to be a lighter draft, maybe not a high top 10 pick or top 15 pick, but maybe potentially could get that back from a team that kind of recognized what's going on there with him and landed through the first couple of years. Would you be open to that, or is this a centerpiece guy of this roster going forward?
I think because of the lack of other options that you have, I think you can't really afford to get rid of Bijan. I think the pick is nice, but I view Bijan as a Hall of Fame talent. So at this point, I think you have to build around him, and you're going to pay him. And to me, Bijan, like a lot of these top running backs, is worth it because he is a true game changer. And we've seen him play quasi receiver at times. And I think you could start justifying those higher price tags at the running back position when you do contribute as much as he does in the passing game. So as long as that continues, he's also, shown a lot of resilience and durability. And obviously when you're talking about extending running backs, that's really important, because these guys do take a lot of hits, but Bijan's really good about avoiding big hits. He's one of those guys that just has great body control and kinesthetic intelligence. And I think that's something that you also look for when you're thinking about giving big money to a running back. So, I'm still on board with just building around him as a centerpiece. And I think you could, next year, I think you're better off keeping Bijan, building sort of a bridge situation next year. Maybe bring in someone like a Malik Willis to be your bridge quarterback, run like a read option, RPO heavy play action offense for a year. And maybe Penix comes back at some point. That would be nice. And ground and pound it and show off Bijan and see what Bijan can look like with a quarterback that can actually threaten on the ground. If it doesn't work, you get a top pick to draft your next quarterback. And if it does, then maybe you have a blueprint for something going forward.
I like it, man. I would be fully on board with it. I wouldn't do this with all running backs. I'm one of those anti guys that I'm very hesitant to do so, but I trust it. And he's a guy at a blue chip grade coming out. He's realized that. I'd be in the same boat you would as far as he gives you, like you talked about, the pass catching out of the backfield in addition to it. So it's like you're getting a couple of things here with this guy, not just what he does in toting the rock, but an interesting thought of the possibility for them if they were trying to maybe pivot and find a different direction there, because he'd be some value. And you're right, that crossroads of having to probably pay him and maybe give him even the highest paid contract in the sport or up there close to it for the running back position at this point. which is never easy to do with running backs. But we're in agreement. So I think that's what you should do. A couple of little finish up questions, but I want to just ask you, is there anybody on this offense that Seahawks fans aren't aware of that they should be aware of coming in this game that's really started to pop for you guys, and the national scene just doesn't have as much hype on this particular guy for what they're doing?
Unfortunately, no, because they're getting nothing out of this receiving core, and Drake London may or may not play. He didn't practice today. Darnell Mooney was awesome for them last year. Had a true resurgence type of season. Made that contract that gave him look like a bargain. He has been hurt. He broke his collarbone on the first day of training camp. Falcons covered it up, called it a shoulder injury, and only a couple weeks ago admitted that he broke his collarbone. And he's been playing through it. So, like, I'm not necessarily dogging out Darnell Mooney. It's a miracle that he's been able to get out there. But
gonna have those Keenan Allen shoulders. You seen the Keenan Allen shoulders? Or the things?
Yeah, at least Keenan Allen was like a big dude. Darnell Mooney is like 5'10", like 180
That's
pounds
true.
soaking wet. So that poor man is just taking a beating out there. He has a big drop problem this year. He can't make any catches in traffic and has just been dropping the football. I'm sure he's not healthy. I'm sure he's in pain. So I don't want to read too much into that, but he was their second guy and he's not delivering. So Drake's may or may not play. Mooney's not delivering. They have no other receivers. They cut their number 3 wide receiver, Ray McCloud, a few weeks after they fired receivers coach Ike Hilliard. Ray McCloud is well known as being one of Ike Hilliard's guys, one of his most outspoken advocates. And he was quietly benched and then cut a few weeks after the firing of Ike Hilliard. They don't have another number 3 wide receiver. Ray was very good for them as a wide receiver 3 that they basically got for little to nothing. He was also one of their only returners, who they also have had a disastrous return game this year. So I think they really didn't think this whole thing through when they decided to just kind of ship him out quietly. So now their receiving core is a Darnell Mooney with a broken collarbone, UDFA David Sills, UDFA Devin Tompkins, UDFA Dylan Drummond. Like, none of these guys are moving the needle at all. And their other tight ends are just blockers. Charlie Werner's a solid blocker. Tagan Catoriano has been a solid, fill-in blocker for them. Tyler Algier's the only other guy. He's good. He's going to play some. He's my guy that I always throw in that anytime touchdown on, because the odds are usually good for him compared to Bijan.
Vulture.
And he vultures all the time. Like, they love him at the goal line. He's really good at it, so I don't blame him. But he's a talented player. I think next year he's probably going to go be a starter for someone and look great. But yeah, there's just not much here. It's sad to me. Like, last year their receivers were the best they've been in years. Drake London had his best season of all time. Darnell Mooney had arguably his best career year. They turned Ray McCloud, who has been like a career sort of special teamer and reserve receiver, into a competent third guy. And then they decide to fire that receivers coach 3 weeks into the season. And there didn't seem to be any backup plan, because these receivers have immediately gone into the toilet since then. So I continue to have a lot of questions about what's been going on here.
Understandable. The more that you talk about this Hilliard situation, the more of a head scratcher it seems, both from the timing and why you did it, and then the fallout effect that comes out of it, domino cascading around it. It just doesn't, you cut off your nose just by your face, or maybe there's like a point of pride or something weird there. Let's get to a couple quick hitters. I've kept you for over an hour here. These are just really quick hitters. They don't have to be where you go super long on the expansive, just things I like to know from a Falcon perspective. I think fans would know, where you stand on it. So they'd be kind of yes or no, or this or that kind of. So first off, Drake London or Julio Jones. Now, I know on the surface of it just seems like Julio, but Julio did have kind of a start to the career that's somewhat a little bit similar production wise to what Drake's done. So I know on the surface it looks like Julio, no brainer. Who do you take?
Julio is probably my favorite player ever. So I have to always go with Julio. That's nothing against Drake. We'll see how Drake's career pans out. I think Drake looks like a top 10 receiver now that he has a quarterback. Speaking of players that didn't get a quarterback,
that's a part of it, right?
As soon as he got a quarterback in Kirk Cousins, he was top 10 receiver, no question. He was looking that way, obviously, this year. So I love Drake, and I think by the time his career is over, he'll be up there with the Julio stats, and he is a very good receiver. But I think Julio is kind of one of those singular guys, and we'll see if Drake can get into that air at some point. Again, we haven't really seen him with a capable quarterback very much. But for me, it's got to be Julio, and until someone shows me that type of just insanity that was watching Julio Jones on a weekly basis, it's going to be Julio for me.
Bijan Robinson or Warrick Dunn?
I do think Warrick Dunn has so much history with this team. I love Dunn. I think it's pretty obvious that Bijan is kind of on another level, as good as Warrick Dunn was, and I think Warrick Dunn would probably agree with this too. So it's nothing against Dunn, but I do think Bijan will probably go down as one of the best Falcons in history, assuming that they can keep him here. We'll see how that goes.
Jerry Glanville or Jim Mora?
Oh God, yeah, this is a different type of question. I don't know. I think maybe slight lean towards Mora, but yeah, it's like asking me to pick my least favorite like food for dinner or something. That's a tough one. I haven't been asked that one before, so kudos. Best
Falcon coach of all time?
I don't know. I think it might be Mike Smith. And Mike Smith's thing, he's kind of got this Mike McCarthy thing to him where he just couldn't quite get over the hump.
He does. That's a great call.
But he was exactly what this team needed when they needed him. And he delivered the most consistent winning football this franchise has ever seen. Everybody had a good opinion of him. He was a nice guy. He built a good culture. As far as like quality of his X's and O's and schemes, that was more questionable. But he was just such a good, solid coach that coached up the fundamentals, raised the floor of the team enormously. I think he was an outstanding coach. I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. Dan Quinn delivered the Super Bowl run, but I think Dan Quinn was helped a lot by Kyle Shanahan. And I think if Mike Smith had Kyle Shanahan, probably would have won that Super Bowl. So
it's a good point. No, I think that's a great poll, and he is underrated. I love that's Mike McCarthy energy. He's got the same, I don't know what it is, that same energy, same vibe. They do give off that same kind of, not a bad way there. It's just that, it's just like that down the middle, a 3-wood with down the middle of the fairway kind of, vibe you get off of him a little bit. Mm-hmm. All right, last one here. And thank you for taking so much time today. Again, folks, do me this favor too, please. Kevin's come in here, giving us well over an hour of his time. Down in the description section below, I have a link directly to his channel. Click that link. Go right to the channel, hit that sub button, show him some love here for coming in, taking his time out of his day here to hop on with me. I'm going to be heading over onto his side of the waters tomorrow, but please do that for him as we want to show some love to these folks coming and taking so much of their time out of the day. And I think you're going to like this question. If Andy Reid is the coach for the Atlanta Falcons at the time that Michael Vick is drafted, how many Super Bowls does Michael Vick have?
2, maybe 3. I don't know. I mean, that would have been fantastic. I think if Michael Vick just stays out of trouble, probably he's also getting into that territory. But such a sad what if there, because they nailed that pick, and Vick was something this league had never really seen on that level. And unfortunately, what goes down there happens. And Mike Vick is probably like one of the biggest what if Falcons that we'll ever see. And would have loved to see that pairing. That would have been something truly special.
It's these quarterbacks, it's always sometimes thrown on them as far as sink or swim, and it's on them, and they failed or they succeeded. And it's very rare we ever really take into account the situation they were put into, what they had around them, the environment to grow and develop. And that wasn't bad Falcon teams, but I mean, we had the offensive coordinator here one time that you guys had at that time. He was, he's a rest in peace. I think he got hit on a bike a couple of years ago, but it's just one where you do wonder a little bit about that in these situations. And I always think about coming up at draft time when quarterbacks go here or go there, about it is landing spot is such a big part of it, and who's developing you. And you mentioned point with Michael, it might've been, was he hungry enough? Was he really driven to do that at that point in the way that he would have needed to, or was he a little distracted there early on in his career? But definitely
maybe Andy Reid would have changed that. Maybe Andy Reid would have got the buy-in. I don't know. Andy Reid seems to have a special connection with these guys. So
I maintain he was more of a dynamic quarterback in his time and era with Vic than even Lamar's been in his era now. And Lamar's been amazing. I know that he's got the MVPs, but Michael and what he could do, it's just that he wasn't on a Baltimore Ravens team. He wasn't with a dynamic head coach. It's like that stuff was kind of driven, maybe wasn't quite as driven as Lamar's been in his career to be what he's become, but he was so much of a difference maker as far as talent wise go. It stood out in that era and time, and still does if you go back and watch this. I think he's got still the all-time longest throw in NFL history or something on that.
No. Yeah. I mean, Vic was the reason I had became a Falcons fan. I mean, that was their quarterback when I was growing up, and he was such an electric player. Really, the first, I think, face of the NFL type of guy the Falcons had. So that was a special time. I wish it would have gone better for everyone. But hey, Michael Vick still love the play. Really special. Enjoyed watching him in Atlanta, and just wish we'd seen more.
Can always go back and watch the highlights. Still always fun to watch.
Yeah,
go back and
I'll
check.
always
I
be there.
check those out on myself every once in a while.
Mhm.
Well, Kevin, I thank you for coming on today. Let's get a score prediction, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up and let you out on your way here.
The Falcons always play better teams better. I think it's part of why this coaching staff is such a problem, is that they get up and prepare properly for the good teams. You can see it in how they play the Patriots, how they play the Colts, how they played the Bills. They beat the crap out of the Bills. At the time, they thought that the Vikings and the Commanders were both good teams. We've seen since then that they're not, because of injuries or whatever. But against the bad teams, they face plant over and over. The loss to the Panthers 0-30. They did not take that team seriously. They got blown out by the Dolphins. They didn't take that team seriously. They're going to take the Seahawks seriously. So they're probably going to cover, this 8.5 point spread. I don't think they're going to win, but like they're going to give the Seahawks a game and make us all sweat it out probably. So I'm thinking something like a 27-24 Seahawks win in this one.
I like it, man. All right. Well, a good game will be cool to see. And I'm guessing we're going to get a good fight from you guys. It's been a tough year, but you still have a lot of strength there and a lot of possibility. Cousins is a veteran quarterback any given Sunday, any given week. This is certainly a team capable of taking us down no matter how hot we've been. So it's going to be, I think, a fun battle on the road. You guys play a little bit differently at home. It feels like a little bit better at home, too, in addition to that. So it'll be a hell of a game. Well, I thank you, Kevin, for coming on today, man, and taking the time. Sorry to take you over an hour. Like I told you, they're going to end up going a little bit long sometimes, but I appreciate you hanging in here with me and giving us your perspective on this team. I don't think you guys are far away. I know it's been a tough year, but I don't think you're far away. It's going to take some smart decisions, maybe a new coaching staff, but it does feel like you guys have enough talent here where the base is there. The foundation is kind of set now. It's getting those extra just final decisions to take you up over the top, which sometimes can be the hardest thing, but you do guys feel like you're kind of getting closer to that precipice.
Yeah, I think the coaching being the biggest problem is kind of a blessing and a curse, because it's like, well, we could just get another coach in here and maybe this team is good enough. But you also have to get the right coach in here, because one thing this team hasn't done the last two go-arounds is get the right coach. So going to have to fix that issue, but I agree with you. I think that the talent on this roster is here. They just need to get the right staff. And unfortunately, that's something they've struggled with. So we'll see if they can figure it out this time around.
Might be some good candidates this offseason. There's some guys being let go in places that maybe they shouldn't. And we might be getting some different guys. You mentioned Kubiak, which, like I said, I think that's an inspired choice. Stefanski, same kind of way for the same kind of reasons. Run heavy system, fit well with Penix, works well, I think, as far as that combination deal. So, folks, again, please do get a sub up over here to Kevin on his side. Falconholics is the name. You can get the link down in the description section. Just click the link. You can get subbed right up over there to his side. I'm gonna be over on his side of the pond here tomorrow and talking Hawks to him on that side of it. But thank you, Kevin. Love to have you back on here too as well. Maybe around draft time. I'm trying to kind of set up something. Maybe have some folks I can reach out to draft time to get perspectives, or send you off like, here's where our mock's at. Who you want to pick of these guys? Something like that. If you were down for something like that, real quick and easy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a big draft guy as well. So I'd be happy to help you out there.
I'd like to this year if I can, and get other folks, content creators, into the off season, because I get usually like it's about 315 and the eyes start to get 315 prospects, and then the eyes start to go, and I can't look at another one at that point. It's like I have my line, but I usually get that deep into it, and I'd love to have your guys' perspective on the outside. And again, I'm gonna try to run kind of a mock, or not live mock, but okay, this mock with the team pick this. Who do you guys want, to kind of see if we can get it accurately down the line if possible. So have you back on.
Sounds like
do
fun.
a little meet on it. Well, thank you for doing this. Appreciate y'all watching. Hit that like button. Sub up to Falconholics on his side of it. Sub up here if you haven't already as well. Hit all the like buttons, all the goods with that. We will be back soon. Got a great matchup this week with the Falcons. Wish you best of luck. Hopefully we can still come away with that win, because we're trying to get this number one bye, man. We've got our sights set on it. It's right there in front of us. But appreciate you taking the time, man. And we'll have you back on again. All right. Well, you guys have a good one. Have a good one. And please don't forget, never forget, go Hawks. Give me a go Falcons.
Go Falcons. Rise up.
There we go.
Something.
Rise up.
Do
There we go.
something. Yeah, I don't know.
Just do something.
Just be normal for once. Yeah.
Just don't suck.
Yeah.
Have a good one, folks.